posterity. Let's put that. So good afternoon. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this Yuki and the Story Mob event entitled Esports in the UK, Challenges and Future Opportunities. A lovely lofty title there for us to get our teeth into. I'm Sam Collins from Yuki and I'm your host for today. Anyone that knows me might be surprised to see me in glasses. My debut for my glass wearing, and you can probably see the screen reflected off them. That might be something I have to work on, but we're not here to talk about my glasses. We're here to talk about esports, which, as I hope you know or aware of or have read about, is an expanding and exciting part of the wider interactive entertainment industry. The sector includes a whole raft of different businesses, professional teams, players, international events, brand activations. It feeds into education and has a rather large viewership. The sector also sees unique partnerships between publishers, developers, agencies, and event partners to deliver, really major iconic activities and activations. But it can be difficult to fully appreciate the opportunity that esports presents to the UK at large. So what we've done here is brought together a raft of industry experts to share their thoughts and dreams and aspirations and hopes about the sector. And it supports the publication later this month of a brand new report produced by Yuki in conjunction with the Story Mob, with amazing insight and expertise from YouGov and Esports News UK to make sure the content is absolutely relevant and as required as a good education for people to fully understand the opportunities around esport. And as you've signed up for this event, you will be sent a copy of that report as a digital PDF when it's published. We'll try and make the session here as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Type your question in there. I'll try to get to them as we go through, talking to our speakers. If we don't get to them, then some of our experts on the session here today will answer them in text for you. So that will be the way that we're dealing with the Q&A today. And be delighted to get any questions that you have to offer. First up, I'd like to introduce Alex Sobel to you. Alex Sobel, MP, no doubt, no less. Alex, thank you so much for giving up some time to join us here today. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself first, if that's okay. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, if that's okay.
I'm Alex Sobel. I'm Member of Parliament for Leeds North West, but I'm also the chair of the Video Games and Esports Parliamentary Group, which Yuki supports in Parliament.
Do you mind telling me what the APPG does? What's the sort of the remit that it has?
So really, it's about having an integration point between Parliament and politics and the industry and the wider video games community. And there are a range of issues to do with video games that are something that parliamentarians are interested in. So workforce issues and work and economic issues are one area. Another area is, utilisation of video games around diversity and diversity of players. The other ones around technology and development technology. And then there are some slightly trickier issues. So things like loot boxes that we discuss, or issues around where there might be issues around children and those sort of things more broadly. Those are all sort of the issues that the APPG takes on, and we have and we try and have a close relationship with industry and speak up for the industry, but also challenge industry where we think they might be able to do better.
That's fabulous. And I often tell people when I talk about the work that Yuki does, one of our key things is working in partnership as closely as possible with government. Ultimately, government will decide or have a big influence on how successful sectors can be. I'm intrigued by your own personal background, actually. I've seen you walking around in Nintendo t-shirts, I think, at a variety of events over the years. What's your sort of personal interest in video games and your sort of gaming CV, if there is one?
I mean, it goes a long way back. I remember playing Elite on a BBC Micro, not mine, and going around to friends. We never had a tape-based computer, but my friends did. My first computer was an Amstrad PCW, so I started on floppies at home. But Amstrad PCW, Atari ST, Atari Jaguar, Atari Lynx. I was quite an Atari. You can tell I was quite into Atari. Then it went, and then we flipped. So then I was PlayStation 2, 3, 4, and PC gamer, and now I've got PlayStation 5. So I'm quite loyal. I'm quite brand loyal as well. So anybody here who's attached to the other side, which was Commodore, and then more recently Microsoft, I apologise for that.
Oh, I can see invites to a variety of studios coming in to try and change your view on that, being such a good advocate for it. Well, thank you very much for that. That's amazing, and it's great to hear. And I know there's a raft of MPs that have been growing up playing games. Their youngsters, their children are playing games, and the understanding and knowledge is far greater than it's ever been. But I'm interested in what the government view is on video games, and you can balance this if you want with your own personal view, whatever you want to talk about.
I think there is a slightly siloed view. So it's seen as a DCMS issue, and it's seen, I think, partly rightly. I think there's no doubt alongside the other creative industries, which I think is right. So alongside music, film, TV, etc. But I do think that apart from the number of MPs, particularly the ones that are involved in the APPG, there is a lack of understanding of the economic importance of the industry and how actually the UK is a world leader. I think per capita we are by far the biggest. The US is obviously bigger than us, but it's a much bigger country, and the importance, number of people it employs, particularly in places where other traditional industries have died off, places like Dundee and Stoke. Video games industry is really important in those places. Obviously the biggest concentrations here in London, where I am now, and in other major cities, Leeds, we have a lot of studios, Manchester, Liverpool, etc. But it is an industry which does provide jobs in places where other traditional industries have gone overseas, and provides good, skilled jobs, well-paid jobs, and creative jobs, and a really wide range of jobs. I think that's another thing that the government and MPs don't understand. It's not just a load of guys sat in a room coding. It's about voice actors, it's about musicians, it's about artists, it's about a whole range of creative people, sales and marketing, etc., and thousands of them. And I think that we need to, we were banging the drum. I'm not saying we're not. We are absolutely banging the drum. But we need to bang the drum a bit harder and faster, and actually find other ways of engaging MPs. And I think we have done that recently. For instance, we might come back to this with the Portcullis Cup, which is a FIFA tournament we ran in Parliament, and we managed to engage some MPs who were not really engaged, mainly through their staffers, which is a great way to get to MPs. So, it's about being a bit creative like the industry is, and finding different and other ways to engage MPs and government ministers.
How did you get on in the Portcullis Cup by you personally?
Yeah, I'd rather not talk about it.
Oh dear!
In the first round, by the eventual winner, I have to say. So so that's fair. If the first round, I might suggest this for next year, was a group stage, and then we left the group stage like a traditional football tournament, maybe I would have managed to get through without a 100% loss record.
Well, we've got to learn from our mistakes, so we'll make a note of that and sort that for you next time. You've talked quite broadly, beautifully about the sort of interactive entertainment and video games. If we have a look at esports, it's a unique part of this ecosystem. What role do you think esports has and can play as part of this interactive entertainment and games industry in the future?
I think in some ways it's better to look at esports through the prism of sport rather than through the prism of video games. So if we think about sport, we think about people participating in sport, and then we think about people spectating professional sport. And I think that's how we should view esports. So people participate in playing games at home, and clearly the people who are professional esports players, that's how they started off, just the same as professional sports people playing amateur sport, for recreation. And then they found out they're very good at it. And then people come and watch those professionals. I mean, I've been to ESL in Birmingham before we had the pandemic. I'm hoping to go this year again to an esports tournament. I think people would be blown away by it. So I think that, and they are in other countries. I know in Poland the esports sector is much more developed than the UK. So I think that if we can promote esports like sport rather than like video games, then we get a lot further down the track. And I know that many in the esports community are doing that and are thinking about that. But I think if we wanted to break into a more mainstream audience, then that's the way to do it. A lot of people, obviously, who play games also watch games. Twitch users vastly outnumber the number of people going to esports tournaments to spectate. So there is an audience there for this, but it's about how we convert that online audience into an in-person audience.
It's interesting, the comparisons and relating it to sport to make it perhaps more accessible and more understandable for people. It's a really interesting idea. I mean, I think the esport industry might not want to be too closely related to sport because we feel like we're unique, but totally understand in terms of that expansion. If we talk about that expansion and increase in demand, what do you think that we can do as an industry in the esport industry to raise our profile within government specifically?
Yeah, I think the element that I found when I went to Birmingham was I was amazed how many people were there and how many days people were there for. So actually, it's a big economic activity. So people obviously have to travel there. They have to stay in a hotel. They have to go out and eat. So this is a big economic activity for this town or city that's hosting, and it's a big economic activity for UK government. You see what the government does to host major international sports tournaments, or this year we're hosting Eurovision, for instance. These big international events, the government falls over themselves to support, try and get involved with. But because it's not broadcast on mainstream media, because it's broadcast on specialist media, and it's not really seen in the same way, and it's not really got the profile. It hasn't got the profile either in the Treasury or DCMS or Deluxe that other large events have. But some of these events are just as big, as, for instance, a European Indoor Athletics Championship. A big esports tournament is effectively equivalent to that, over a similar period. So it's got the same economic effect. So I think that's where we need to be thinking. We need to be thinking of not so much about the players and the teams and even the broadcast element, which I know is important, but more about the in-person impact on the place where it's set. And actually, I think where just as important as the government. UK cities, so we have a group of core cities, which are the biggest cities outside London. They nearly all have arena. We have an arena in Leeds. I'd love Leeds to host a major esports tournament, but so does Manchester, so does Liverpool, so does Newcastle, so does Hull, so does Sheffield. Everybody has Nottingham. Everybody has an arena. Birmingham utilises its arena for esports. We should all be able to help grow that market so that we all have major tournaments in our own cities if the market's big enough for that. And so I think there's definitely a piece of work as well as with government to engage with those city councils and those regional mayors around the esports, because they are quite engaged in video games and the video game in the studios and production, but they're less engaged in esports.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. And you've accidentally answered the question from the audience from VI. So thank you very much for ticking that one off. So excellent for that. So you've talked a little bit about sort of raising profile and the like. What do you think? A little bit more of a testing question, if you don't mind. So let's say that we are getting the ear of government, we are getting the eyes of government. They're seeing these events, these major activations. Where do you think the industry can and should be pushing for additional support? Are there particular areas where you think, as a sector, we can say to government, we need this? Are there other areas that you would like us to focus on?
So I think so. So the areas probably where I'd ask are UKTI. So what's UKTI doing to support esports? What's the tourism sector? What's Visit Britain, Visit England doing to support the esports sector? I might be wrong, but I think and I used to be Shadow Tourism Minister, I think there's very little engagement. But Visit Britain, Visit England, if there's a major sporting event, major music event, they'd be all over it. They'd be all over it trying to promote the UK as a destination for that. This is a different audience, but just as valid. And why are they not engaged in that to promote our esports tournaments? And actually, it's pretty much cheaper to promote, because you promote to a very specific argument that it's actually quite easy to get to. You don't need to put a big advert on the Paris Metro for this audience. It's all online. It's all digital. It's all trying to get into the right advertising space online. So those are the two places I'd go. And actually, tourism sits in DCMS as well. not the same minister, but sits from DCMS. So, the same department that's looking after video games and esports is also looking after tourism. So those are the two areas where I probably push.
That's excellent. Thank you for that, and that does make perfect sense. We understand that. So as a sector, no doubt we'll be trying to do that. You focused quite a lot on sort of internal promotion. What about the opportunities? Are there opportunities, and how can government help UK esports be promoted on a wider scale, European-wise or
That's
global
what I
scale?
meant. So Visit Britain, their job
Mm,
is from the UK overseas. Their job is to get overseas tourists into the UK. That's
right.
their job. So but what I'm saying is you wouldn't put an advert on the Paris Metro for an esports tournament. You'd advertise digitally. You'd advertise online.
Yes. Yes.
Much cheaper and easier if they knew what they were doing. So I'm a bit, so one of my concerns with chat tourism is they're a little bit stuck in an old paradigm. So
Right.
it's maybe a bit of the job for the industry to work with them to move them onto new paradigm. And it's not. I don't think it's just in this area where you get into that new paradigm. There are other areas. So, but I think that they're the vehicle. They're the vehicle to get overseas visitors into UK sports tournaments. I
And
think.
go on. Yeah.
I was going to say some of the other countries are much better at getting our people over to their esports
Mm,
tournaments than we
mm.
are to get them to ours. So Poland's a good example. Everybody here seems to know about Polish esports tournaments, and because of so many cheap flights, people do go.
Yeah, so we can learn from some of our what might be viewed as competitors across the world. So learn from some of their expertise, and there is no doubt that government does give the broader interactive entertainment industry great support with video games tax relief and R&D tax credits and the like. So that support is greatly appreciated. I just wonder if there is something more tangible we can work on in this particular sector beyond what you've talked about. But that's probably for us to come up with some ideas as a group and come back to you. So
I think the two things, is maybe around the arenas. So,
mm,
so it's expensive, the normal arena rates. So it's about having some sort of subsidy for arenas, and then maybe it is working Visit Britain on hotels, on package deals, on promotion. They get funding from DCMS, so there's probably a three-way meeting to say, well, what part of DCMS funding to Visit Britain can be spent on this promotion, and then what does it return in additional revenues to the UK tourist industry, so to hotels and restaurants and all of that, because that's what Visit Britain want to see.
one of our next projects at UK within our esports sector is to look at the economic contribution of esports in the UK. So we'll capture that, and then we'll come back to you and look at some of those, explore some of those opportunities. Final sort of thought from me, if that's all right, on the future of games. What's exciting you about this amazing interactive entertainment industry? What are the things that you're really looking forward to?
Well, I've loved this journey that I've been on, where, there was a tape and then there was a floppy disk and then there was CD and now we're down, and then there was downloads and now we're cloud. So the cloud is the future, and the cloud and the internet means that we can have streaming games where people will play together. I mean, it's already happening. And then we've got new technology coming in. I see, I love consoles, but we're probably moving towards a more integrated future, on platforms. And then obviously we've got VR as well. I think VR is going to shrink, and then you're going to have this sort of everything sort of running together. You have these online cloud streaming platforms where you don't need the physical hardware for that, but you then want to be immersed in it. I'm basically describing Ready Player One here, aren't I? But I think that is the future we are edging towards, and I think that's the trend. So and I grew up with cyberpunk and all of that, so I'm quite looking forward to it. As long as it doesn't create a dystopian future, which I don't think it will, it's all new.
Well, that's a role you can play as well. You can make sure we don't fall into that dystopian world. So, yeah, just want to say thank you very much for joining us today and giving up your time and sharing some of your insight in this. We know the work of the APPG is vital, and long may it continue. And we'd be delighted to see you at some future esport events around the UK, particularly this year and the year afterwards. So thank you very much for joining us. Go on, yes.
No, I'm just going to say I'm going to try and come to an esports event this year because I've not been one since COVID. So I really am. So anybody out there wants to invite me to their event, feel free. Feel free.
We'll make that happen. Well, thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
And as Alex leaves us, I'm now going to invite Dominic Sacco to join me.
Hello.
Ah,
Sam,
Dom, there you are.
hi.
How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I didn't know you were a rock and roll hero with your guitar behind
Yeah,
you.
well, used to be back in the day. I wouldn't say hero, but yeah, had
I'm
that.
not going to
That's
put you on the
old,
spot
that.
to play. Don't worry. I'm not going to get you to do anything like that. Unless you want to. It's purely optional.
No, I want to keep the listeners on the call, right?
Yes, well, I haven't told them yet that I'm going to be doing 3 interviews today, so they're going to have too much of me. So hopefully I'll ask you some nice open questions and you can give some comprehensive answers and there's not too much Sam time today. But thank you for joining me here. And you're here for, well, a couple of reasons. One, an expert, which is great. And 2, you helped with the creation of this report. And we're just going
I
to
did.
chat about some of the origins and some of the things around that came out around the report. But first, do you want to tell the audience who you are?
Yeah, sure. My name is Dominic Sacco. I'm the editor and founder of Esports News UK. It's an online publication dedicated to esports in the UK, and I do a little bit of consultancy and freelance work, helping people enter the esports industry, and also some freelance writing and editing work as well.
And how's it going at the moment?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Yeah, I've been working on an interesting little project. It's not been announced yet, but it's taken me back to my magazine days. I've been doing sort of design layouts and physical, layouts and stuff, which has been pretty fun. And yeah, ticking along. We've got some good events coming up in the UK, which I'm sure we'll get onto talking about.
Absolutely. And if we just go back to this report, which is going to be coming out towards the end of this month. I mean, firstly, thank you for taking it on when I asked you to as a recognized industry expert. You were our first port of call to be a contributor and a creator of this. So
thanks for reaching out.
What did you think when I first said, how about you to produce this report? What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I was excited because I feel like we need more data. This is a thing, this is a recurring theme that comes up in discussions around esports in the UK and globally as well. We need more data. It comes at a time where I think Newsy, one of the analysts, they're going to be stopping their esports reports. So we need more data. We need more reports. The YouGov data in this report is really good. It's pulled from questioning millions of people. So I was interested to see what the most followed esports teams are in the UK and so on. Yeah, that YouGov data combined with Yuki's pool and industry focus and everything, I was sort of honoured to be asked, to be honest, and having the story mob involved as well, a company that I know who send me press releases and, help get coverage for a lot of things that are happening in esports. It was a sort of no-brainer, really. So yeah, it's been challenging, but it's been exciting as well.
And how when you set off on this journey to try and create a quite a tricky report, quite far-reaching, quite all-encompassing, how did you put it together? What will people read in this report when it's finally published?
Yeah, so I mean, it was good to have those initial planning calls with yourself, with YouGov, with Story Mob, and we sort of decided to break it down into 3 sections, sort of looking at the state of the market, looking at the sort of history of UK sports, how things have gone in recent years, then covering some profiles, so key companies that are based in the UK, and we've got some people on this call here today that are featured in that. And then the final section was sort of looking more towards the future, looking at opportunities and so on. But the first thing I wanted to do was reach out to other people and get their comments in. When I read a report like this, I like to hear from different experts in the market. I don't want it to be all written in third person. So that was key for me. And, they gave me such great feedback, great detail with their answers that, I asked them quite a few questions, but then I could use their answers, not just for the profiles on their companies, but for the different sections in the report as well. So it did take a while to go through all of their answers, transcribe everything, put things in the correct order and so on. And it is a sort of quite a long report, but I think it's nice to have detailed analysis as well.
Well, did anything surprise you? I mean, let's talk about some of the nuts and bolts of this.
It's a good question. It might be because I've been so ingrained in UK sports over the years that there weren't many surprises for me. But I think for a lot of people looking at this, there will be maybe a few surprises in there. Who the most followed teams are, London Spitfire and London Royal Ravens were up there in the sort of the Overwatch and the Call of Duty leagues, respectfully. I would have thought maybe Fanatics and other UK-based or London-based esports organisations would be high up in there as well, which they are. But yeah, that was good to know. And I think just looking at the future as well, and what is the future of esports in the UK? People talking about things like the metaverse and so on. Diving into some of those topics, I think, were pretty interesting and got me thinking about things in a different way than I did prior to writing the report. So not a ton of surprises for me, but I think for a lot of people reading this report, it will open their eyes and show them what viewer habits are like in the UK.
My particular the thing that really pleased me most about the report is the number and the diversity of people that you spoke to with their different backgrounds and their different experiences. You really have got, I apologize if anyone on the video call here wasn't asked to contribute, but you really do have a who's who of leading industry experts. And I guess as a result, you're going to get lots of different views and opinions and forthright views on where we're going. So
yeah, exactly. I did my best as well to, consider a wide variety of people and companies and so on to focus on. But then, we had planning chats. You've got to whittle it down. You can't keep going on forever. So we've got about 20 or so, 22 companies which we focused on. There are other ones out there as well. The UK has had some really good grassroots talent over the years, and we can't mention every single team or company or agency. And the other thing as well is the publishers. We've got some publishers have offices here, do some really good UK leagues, and it's good to recognise them as well. But yeah, good diversity, teams, tournament operators, agencies. There's a few players and talent that we mentioned in the report as well, giving people a good snapshot of esports in the UK. That was the aim anyway.
And at the end of the report, you naturally try and bring some of this together in a couple of sort of areas and drivers for growth, which is interesting. Something that surprised me a little bit, but it's only because I hadn't really thought about it, but I'm interested to get your views on this. You were talking about the need or the opportunity to promote UK esports, to give it its own identity and try and grow esports in the UK on the basis as a UK specific thing. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, 100%. I think when you look at esports globally and you look at the strongest sort of regions out there, you've got South Korea, China, North America has some good teams and setups, and then other parts of Europe as well. France and Spain and so on have had successful League of Legends tournaments there and other tournaments and streaming opportunities. But the UK, we do produce some great talent. Just on the weekend, we had a Valorant player win a major Valorant tournament, Jake Boaster Howlett. It's good to shout about that kind of thing. I think one trend we've seen in recent years is the bridging of sort of UK esports leagues with Nordics as a region. That's had its benefits as well. It's good we've sort of been brought together with other countries, and we're mingling with those players a bit more on those fan bases. But in the process, a few people have made this observation, and I tend to agree with it. We've sort of, UK esports may have lost a little bit of its identity in the process. So it's good. It's important we don't forget about the UK talent, the identity we have. I want to give you an example. Epic LAN, a recent Epic LAN event took place a couple of weekends ago. And there was a player there who was involved in a moment in a Counter-Strike match. It was a bit of a blunder, but the fact that, the UK esports, we've always had, I think, a good sense of humour, a good sense of camaraderie. And that moment, this sort of fail, you could say, went global. That news went global. Big streamers like XQC were sort of laughing at this player that got things wrong. He basically was in a match. He had to defuse the bomb in Counter-Strike, and instead of focusing on doing that properly, he started shouting a bit of banter at the team that he was beating, and in the process lost and got knocked out. So, we do need to, let's not forget some of those moments and things. And okay, it's not intrinsically British, but the way it was done, and you know, that bit of banter around it and everything, and the memes that spawned from it, you know, that's part of our identity, I feel. So yeah, let's tap into that a bit more.
Well, we're in the entertainment industry. I love that story. That's brilliant. Yeah, we're here to entertain. We're here to have fun. Yeah, let's not take it too seriously. Let's just go and have some amazing entertainment. I love that.
100%. Yeah, sometimes people forget that, Sam. I think this is esports, it's video games, it's fun at the end of the day. Let's all focus on that. And that's I make a conscious effort of that when covering the news as well, trying not to be so doom and gloom all the time. But anyway, I'm digressing.
Well, I'm going to talk to you about one other, and I think I'm going to touch on this in the panel later on. But I think it's important to get your view on this. So, and Alex referenced it earlier, talking about the opportunity to try and attract major events to the UK, working with regional authorities and local promotion and international promotion to do that. What scope do you think is there for attracting major events to the UK?
I think we've got a massive opportunity here. I think the work that London and Partners and others are doing at the moment is important. London and Partners said a few months ago, I think we want London to be the European capital of esports by 2024. You know, that's a big goal. And then since then, we've had the mid-season League of Legends tournament announced here. That's coming up in May. We've had the Apex Legends. Several tournaments are going to be taking place this year. You know, last year we had the Rocket League event happening, the Spring Invitational at London's Copper Box Arena, which seems to be billing itself as a esports centric venue. But then we've got loads of other great venues as well. Arena Birmingham, you know, that's done the ESL 1, Dota 2 tournaments. You know, we've got the Birmingham NEC with Insomnia Gaming Festival, which isn't solely esports, but we've got all these great venues. You've got all these different stadia, world-class stadia. I don't like to use Tottenham Hotspur's name, but you know, stadiums like that in the UK, we've got brilliant venues, and I hope we can use them a little bit more for esports in the future. So I do think we've got a massive opportunity here to host bigger, better events. We've had some real big events in the past, like the Dota 2 one I mentioned, and face it, we had a CSGO major and other events. So more of that, please. I've been crying out for more events for a few years now. Okay, we've had the challenge of the pandemic, but we're in this post-pandemic period now, or post-lockdown period, where I think we can, you know, do some really good things in esports.
And it's interesting, in many ways, those two things are connected. You know, we do have a well-known international reputation, a pedigree for organising great events in the UK. So it feeds back to the UK identity, things that we're good at, and focusing on what we're good at. So yeah, when you read the report, our audience, you will be sent a digital copy of this when it's published. You know, there's some really interesting drivers for growth in there, things that we want to focus on, that the esport industry in the UK can go out and make happen and support that growth. So great work on bringing all of that together. I mean, I don't want to overstate this, but do you think, you know, how do you think the report can perhaps, what role can it play in supporting the development of esports?
I think it taps into the education theme, and this is something that comes up time and time again as well. When I spoke to some of the interviewees for this report about what can we do a bit better, how can we improve, or in the future, or what would you like to see change in the future, quite a few people said to me, Dom, we need greater education of esports across the board. Awareness has increased over the years. You know, got things like the Olympics getting involved more. There's been some good mainstream coverage of esports in the UK and globally, but we need to keep it up. You know, keep it up and get more government support. And that starts with, like Alex was saying earlier, I loved what he was saying about educating councillors and mayors and things like that around the UK. Absolutely, let's get more regional esports events, and it starts with that education, because I think if more people can see what esports brings, the footfall it can bring, the interest, the targeting young people and older people as well, you know, like myself, there's a lot of benefits here. So for me, the main role it can play, this report, is around the education of esports, the benefits of it, the not just the benefits of getting involved in esports, but financial benefits as well, you know, and these events we're hosting and pushing UK as a force. So yeah, education aspect for me, I think, is key.
Well, wonderful. Well, then I'm sure our audience can't wait to see that report. And thank you again for your work on it. And thank you for joining me here today to discuss it. Thanks for your time.
Very welcome, Sam. Thanks for asking me on.
Right. And as Dominic takes a step back, I'm going to invite our panelists to come forward. So our final session today will be a panel of well, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, and then we'll decide whether you're industry experts or no. Of course you're industry experts. We wouldn't be having you here otherwise. So thank you so much for joining me. Heather, you are next to me on the screen, so I'm going to go to you first. Do you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi, yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of Hot Drop. Hot Drop is a creative marketing agency. We're UK based and UK centric, but with an international client base. We operate mainly in esports, but that other sector of video gaming as well, and emerging those across several sort of, sectors as well. So sports, F&B, brick and mortar, direct to consumer and such like that. So we've been around for 3 years as Hot Drop, and I've been in the industry for 12 years now. Started off as an influencer and I had the privilege and honor to work on big tier 1 international events at ESL, but also a lot of that local centric stuff that's been discussed by Alex and Dom so far as well. So yeah, really looking forward to being on this panel and obviously reading the report when it comes out as well.
Yeah, thank you very well. You've contributed to the report, so you can read your own words.
Yes, I know.
Amazing. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to go literally across my screen in order. So I'm coming to you next, James, and then I'll ask you about it, and then Neil to introduce yourself. So James, what do we need to know about you?
I've been around for a bit. Basically, I started working in the marketing sector for tech, consumer and gaming industries, and ultimately esports became an obvious angle of attack in terms of connecting with communities interested in competitive gaming. Obviously that was very closely aligned with more endemic partners who wanted to sell products and services and saw the growth in that area. I founded ESL in the UK back in 2012, and that grew significantly. I'm still partially involved with ESL. I don't seem to ever be able to leave for many different reasons.
Are they trying to get rid of you? Let's be honest.
Yeah, that probably 100% they are. Yeah.
Right, okay.
And I've taken on some really exciting contracts recently, which is exploring more around how I guess esports is evolving as a format. How does competitive entertainment really take a prevalent stance in the entertainment of today? And I think it's this panel hopefully will talk about some of those angles.
Absolutely, we will return to that theme. Thank you.
So thank you
very much. And I'm delighted. I don't like to talk about personal stuff here, but you're wearing a liney jumper with a liney background and a liney sun. Is that deliberate?
It's all the wrong things for broadcast, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. What do I know about it? Look at me. Right, that's the only personal stuff. You're free. I'm not going to be not going to pick up anything else. Wouter, over to you next. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Almost feels like with the not youngest, but in career-wise in esports. So it's been 8 years for me. I've been for 3.5 years CEO for Excel, to still fully engaged for Excel, to now a lot of. But to what James said, like mapping out next, iteration, if you will, for us as an esports organization. I've been CEO as well to another smaller esports organization called Fnatic, and that was my start. Yeah, likewise, really interesting join, good discussion so far. I think there's a lot to say as well, esports, sports, gaming, things to what James said as well, it's still somewhat unexplored territory, and yeah, good to talk about it.
Are you frustrated that Fnatic wasn't recognised as leading UK team? It was behind the Royal Ravens and London Spitfire. How do you feel about that?
No, you know what, like you can sort of, you know, joke about it. I think objectively, again, it's very interesting, right? So what makes a team popular, what makes you as a team, you know, it's a whole mix of things. It's obviously sometimes how do you measure it, or you could even
Exactly.
go to a
Yes.
debate,
Yes.
what is the definition of esports, you know? So, but yeah, no, I mean, it's simply interesting to see, and we need to at times ask ourselves, you know, are we all doing the right thing here, or, you know, what is good for our passion and offense, and what's good for business.
Fabulous. Thank you very much for that. And sorry to put you on the spot with that little nugget there. Neil, last but by no means least, delighted that you can join us here today.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for asking. Yeah, and I'm Neil. I'm from Ubisoft in the UK, and I lead on all of our esports efforts across the UK at the moment, as well as some other countries, including the Nordics, etc. Yeah, I've been here now for 4 years, working on esports here, other countries like I mentioned as well, like South Asia, and developing the ecosystems there. And I've been in the industry probably, yeah, coming up 8 years now as well, where I started over in the multiplayer. So multiplayer, Insomnia,
Right.
into Game, into Belong, across all of those. So yeah, no, excited to talk Rainbow Six exclusively, because that's what we're here for. There's no other games around, are there? So
have you got a Rainbow Six branded top on as well? Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you have.
Specifically the UK and Ireland nationals.
Yeah, I assume you went out to Canada earlier this month, last month, back into last month.
I did, and after seeing the outside everyone's windows and pictures on social media today, that snow was nothing compared to Montreal 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it's really interesting when you're in an Uber to the arena, and the Uber has to stop twice to de-ice the car.
Oh my word!
Yeah, that's proper snow.
Oh my word. We're not going to get too deep into the snow hopefully today, but we are going to talk esports and a variety of things, particularly looking at the future of esports, you know, and looking at all of the really the key positive aspects of the future. And I want to talk about the next generation of people as part of the future. You know, most people on the call have been around for a while, but ultimately the people that are going to shape esports in the UK in the future may well be us now, but the up and coming, the youngsters, the ones that are currently at university, they're playing in a variety of competitions run by NSE and Newell and the like. But how do we make sure, and I'm going to start with James on this one, if that's okay, how do we ensure that there are the right pathways for this current university cohort and future cohorts to continue their esport journey into the UK and try and keep them in the UK? What are your thoughts around that?
It's a topic close to my heart, actually, Sam, and thanks for asking me first on this. We've been working with the universities, I think, back since 2016, I would say, something like that. We were involved in all sorts of different ways in terms of encouraging, obviously, people to consider esports as a career direction, but also considering what their skill set would be. And then we actually ended up working with the universities on a government grant side of things, so an R&D project, which was one of the first in the UK as well. That was with York. And then since then, we started work with universities commercially to look at how do we bolster their offering for student outcomes, essentially. And I think there's some really good things and bad things around this. Universities and to some degree colleges obviously see sports as an opportunity to attract students. And, you know, it's not cheap to go to a university nowadays, and it's big business. And of course, when you're trying to figure out your next step in life, and an esports degree hits the prospectus right in the face, you're likely to choose that as an option, right? And I think we've seen a kind of variety of quality when it comes to what experience the students are getting. And obviously the industry is not going to benefit unless that quality is good. And I think there's a lot more industry can do to help that quality increase. And one of the bits of work I'm working on right now is actually looking at how do we share standards and workflows, and also content and access to industry directly to those education establishments, in order to create a better opportunity for those students. And that's really exciting. I was on a call with Barnsley just earlier today, in fact, doing amazing work. And there's so much more that the industry can actually offer to help them to proceed. But it's not just education. It's I think there's lots of different social groups and networks. I've seen some really interesting things around football clubs. For example, Tranmere Rovers, of all places, have an incredible apprenticeship scheme, which they started out just for general industry, and now they're moving into the esports space to really encourage kids from all sorts of backgrounds. As you can imagine, that particular area is of a particular social class, and they're making opportunity for them. And I think, as Alex mentioned earlier, and Wouter, like this is the future of the industry. And if we're going to attract more IP to the UK, we need to have the people here.
Yeah, well, thank you for mentioning name checking, Wouter. I'm coming to you next, Wouter. Thank you very much for that. James, so Wouter, we're talking about the sort of pathways into the industry. Feel free to answer this however you want, but are we getting enough talent in as well? I might just throw that little layer on top of the question, if that's okay.
Yeah, good. So I look at quite broadly. I think following on to what James said, it's not only talent to compete, it's talent to build and support the whole ecosystem, as at times we would call it. I think maybe the reality is what you see sometimes is that how passion becomes your profession, right? So I think the bridge that we can absolutely facilitate is how to understand how your passion becomes a profession. And I think that is maybe at start the hardest challenge is to overcome something that you really enjoy doing, and then suddenly becomes your profession with obligations. I think indeed stronger ties with the educational institutions, they are there. But if I speak for ourselves, for Excel Esports, so we do have good relationship. We have a partnership with Duke of Edinburgh Award. But I think what's important here as well is consistency. And I think also here reality is that, to guide people really through this, you need to have really well established programs that are, supported and maintained if, people move up or change job or change organization, etc. So, I think all in all, I think it is there. We need to build stronger bridges. And I think the role that we can play, for example, as an organization like Excel Esports, is obviously to give a lot more insights what's happening behind the scenes through content, through interviews, for speaking, but obviously also inviting young talent over to our Excel HQ in London and come and see, what is the reality of working in the industry. It's not, rocket science. In the same time, it's different from, how you enjoy it as a passion and how you turn it into your profession.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it, with the passion turning into, how many people are dissatisfied in the jobs they do. It's fascinating. We shouldn't be seeing that in our entertainment industry. Heather, you've been expanding progressively as a business over time. Are you finding the right sort of talent coming into your, making itself available for your business? Are you finding people that understand all of the nuances of esports that are available to you?
Yeah, I think we find people that are passionate but lack anything else sort of, they're more of a generalist. And I think generalists were really good. And what we needed sort of, a lot of collective minds that were willing to put on many hats at any given time. But what I don't think is being steered to people that graduate throughout the university, but let's be real, like the majority of who I hire don't even have degrees, but did experienced some level of university education, or have completely failed at GCSEs, but are, you know, best performing individuals at the business. So I think, you know, we're looking for specialists now, people that are willing to home in. And one of the things that we can do in order to keep people satisfied, as you mentioned, Sam, is making sure we're really clear cut on responsibilities and not blurring the lines too much nowadays, so that they can hone in on those skills, and it sparks innovation. It doesn't spark sort of a collective generalist approach to majority of work, and so that really starts and I think that lacks at a lot of kind of businesses within the UK esports sort of sector at the moment. Is like, we do need to start to sort of streamline some of those roles, look for efficiencies, and sometimes saying specialist sounds more expensive and not efficient, but actually that is far more efficient for the sector, and overall seeing everyone do that will hopefully rise the industry to that next step.
It feels like an industry maturing, isn't it? These are the kind of process you go through when you mature. And we're talking here about sort of talent pathways coming into the industry. We're going to change tack a little bit on this. And Neil, I'm going to come to you first on this, if that's okay. I mean, feel free to reference education and pathways if you want. But, you know, as a maturing, growing industry, we have to make sure that our players, our teams, our employees match the people that are playing the games, and that we're being far more inclusive and diverse at all levels and all the ways that we do that. And we're still not there. I think there's always room for improvement in diversity and inclusion in all sectors. We're no different from anyone else, but maybe this is an opportunity for us, actually. So what do you think, Neil, needs to be done to create more opportunities for particularly female talent and marginalized genders when they want to get into esports and be at the top level?
I think there's kind of two different ways there, because you've got like the talent in terms of players and things like that. And I'm talking more about kind of like esports in general here. And we've also got the side like, you know, presenters, casters and everything like that, because they're two very different kind of talents. You know, I think something that historically has gone well on our side from a UK esports thing has been the growth of diversity inclusion with our talent that have gone up through the casting. Like a really good example is Fluke, who she ironically was casting one of our first Rainbow Six tournaments that we were doing as Belong, because she was working at Game at the time within one of the stores. And yeah, I was with her 2 weeks ago, because she was casting at the Six Invitational, which is the global, you know, grand finals of Rainbow Six Siege. So it's amazing to see that over the course of 5 years, but it's taken 5 years for us to kind of push her up through to get to that stage. And you know, we've had that within our UK stuff recently as well, where we've had Grace, who she's been casting with us now for about 3 years, give or take, who's come up from the university scene initially. She's someone I want to now sort of push up to the Six Invitational. So don't know if she'll ever see this, but hopefully she won't hold me to that, just in case. But but at the same time, you know, and then we had someone who we've never had host before on our Northern Premier League activation or tournament, which was Gennaro, who also has done a lot with in the Null and their tournament. So we've kind of like, we often look to those universities and to those grassroots tournaments to try and find that talent, but it's very hard to find it if people aren't being given those opportunities. So we kind of rely on those sorts of grassroots people, so people like NSE and people like Neil, to kind of hopefully bring those people up so that we can then steal them and then kind of push them up the funnel. On the player side of thing, though, it's a little bit harder. I do think that's something you know, I'm not saying that we've struggled with, but obviously, you know, there aren't any female UK Rainbow Six players with any of our tournaments, and that's something we need to kind of, you know, try and encourage more of them to start to take part of, but we've got to find out why they're not taking part as well. So there's some work to be done there, but I think it is a case of going back to, you know, one of the points from earlier. It's about marketing and signposting to that you can take part in these esports, and making sure that they're on the other side welcoming to you know, to all of this extra inclusion, etc. I think it needs to be welcoming, otherwise they're not going to feel safe or anything like that in there. hopefully that's answered the question
Yeah,
properly.
no, it's a fascinating challenge, and you know, Rainbow looking for female players is no different from any other games. Actually, it's a really interesting challenge, and something which you know, we need to work out how to try and do that. Fout, if you've got any ideas on this, involved in teams and major teams over the years, you know, in terms of recruiting female players and players from marginalized genders, how's that gone for you? Has it been easy and possible?
Possible, certainly, yes. I think, you know, easy. I'd like to think about this as, I think the role that we have to play, you know, usually these things, they start at the beginning, and the beginning is the grassroots level. And to make it a little bit more relatable to myself, as in, you know, I have two boys, but they go to school, and I kind of see and imagine, you know, what's happening at school. And you know, they talk a lot about the games, obviously, with their class friends, boys and girls, and I think this is a bit where it starts, because you know, this is in the physical world, maybe a bit more people more coming together. And just recently, I spoke to ECA.gg, that's Icelandic, not to go really into that, but they mentioned London-based New Meta. And New Meta, and they actually opening gaming clubs. And I thought it was fascinating. So, you know, we are at the top of esports. We obviously very depending on grassroots talent and how they developed. I would say it's not necessarily our core activities, maybe at times not yet as much as football clubs do. But I think this is where it starts, is how we can collaborate, work and support together for children to come together to present and position gaming clubs as much as amateur football clubs, or, you know, when people play music and come together, this is a way for younger talent and maybe big talent to come together and actually enjoy their passion in the game together, boys and girls. Rather than, and we all know that's not only in gaming, in an online environment, we might all get a little bit awkward about it, and we show maybe very different behavior when we are physically together. So, you know, I'd like to think about it for us in Excel Esports, how we can support these initiatives, how we can meaningfully contribute, how we can show, if you have that ambition to grow as a serious talent, and what it means as a talent and a competitive talent or otherwise in the industry, what it means to be really good. And that's not only having good game skills, it's having good social skills, it's communication skills, it's being a good human being, basically. So I think that's our role. And yeah, again, I you know, it's one of those examples, New Meta, Play New Meta, and the gaming clubs that they start to put out there for children to go to. I think that's an amazing initiative that we should look at and support.
I mean, a raft of good ideas there, and wouldn't it be amazing if we could lead in diversity and inclusion, and the benefits that would come to the sector as a result would be immense. So,
yeah,
you know, and do it for the right reasons.
Maybe one thing to mention that then, Sam, is you know, I'd like to think as well, you know, inclusion is accessibility for everyone, right? So it's giving everyone the same options and accessibility and hardware, as we usually say, to develop that talent. And I think that's part of those gaming clubs, is to make that happen, because ultimately an internet cafe is not the same environment, and if you will, safe environment and controlled environment as such a gaming club might be for a younger audience to you know, enjoy their passion and develop the skills. Absolutely,
that's a great point. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to move on to the next sort of mini topic here. If either James or Heather wants to come back and talk about DNI, please feel free to do so in a second. Just wave at me and I'll come to you.
I was going to mention,
James, you want to go on then?
Yeah, sorry, just really quickly, because I think when we think about esports, obviously it's the whole ecosystem is required, right? The incentive needs to be there and consistency needs to be there. So a couple of years ago now, ESL introduced something called Impact, which was it's a CSGO tournament. And it's the same thing I think we've seen of late in football, where you need the investment there in order to create that incentive and create some consistency in order to encourage that grassroots talent to progress. And it's really interesting because, as I think this happened in football as well, I think everyone was blown away by the sheer level of feedback and viewership that came and support that came with it. And ESL actually forecasted around 12,500 concurrent viewers peak for season 1, with about 200,000 hours of viewership, and it ended up being more like 45,000 concurrents with 450,000 hours of viewership. So and with lots and lots of learnings along the way and very good feedback. So and there was some great drivers there, but also the barriers were largely around creating that atmosphere and that feeling of a community, I suppose, which could be worked on. But this comes with the whole sort of grassroots support. So it was super interesting to see that encouraging behavior once an investment goes into it.
Well, I mean, grassroots has never been so vibrant. This is a great opportunity to make that step change, isn't it? So let's hope we can do that.
Sam, if I may.
Go for it.
Thanks.
All yours.
Yeah, no, I just, obviously being the woman on the panel as well, just there's a few things that we've also thought about, or I've also thought about when asked around D&I, and there's a couple of things there that ring true, that marketing and decision making needs to be inspired and encouraged to go with different norms and try different things, and just because it doesn't make sense to the person approving the content, that they should go and put trust in those individuals. And therefore your work task force, your team, they need to be diverse, and you need as many influences and personalities and experiences and backgrounds as possible in your workplace, because without that you are just targeting the same and you sound the same, and ultimately there's no uniqueness, and you're never going to reach new audiences. And then in terms of women playership and competition, I think we have to think about, and I hate the word recruitment, but advertising the fact that there is the possibility to compete and play elsewhere. And this really struck a chord with me, because I've been desperate to find a sports team locally in my area for 2 years now. And actually it was through paid Facebook advertising that they found 60 players in a tiny little town, and I'm the youngest player, and everyone for netball. So, and everyone else is in their 50s and 60s, and it's fantastic. But they would have never found about it if someone didn't go and put some money behind paid Facebook advertising. So I think we have to think about the way that we're marketing and the avenues that we're marketing, and what is deemed traditional for us, which is digital, and the ways we're doing it. We need to work internally on other marketing strategies to reach other backgrounds and player bases and audiences as well. So I think there's a big overhaul that needs to be done, but I think the work has been done obviously at the grassroots level. It's now at the professional level and the businesses too.
Perfect, thank you. Brilliant stuff. The panel's going very well. I'm going to continue just for a little bit longer. We had a couple of other themes I wanted to have a look at. We might end up combining them, who knows? One of them was looking at investment, and we've seen some of the challenges that esport businesses have had in sort of generating long-term successful business models. And the other side was looking at a little bit more general about this report. This event is looking at the opportunities for growth in the UK specifically. Where do we feel we sit in European esports, and what are the realistic goals for the UK? It may well be that we need more investment, so they might be connected, who knows? Heather, you're on the screen. I'm coming to you first. So it's quite a big question there.
Yeah,
you can take. Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
Have a go at it. Go on, you tell us.
Yeah, I think so. UK and investment, and just I guess give my overall summary sentiment is that money is going to get tight over the next few years. We obviously had the pandemic and everything boomed, shares and stocks and everything went up, and the industry was looking great. I think it's going to balance out and level out a little bit. And with that, I think consolidation overall of budgets, we're already seeing internationally a bit of a squeeze and a bit of a funnel. I'm fearful we'll lose grassroots activations unless we push them to central budget holders as CSR, which they're more than CSR. And so I think that's going to make it very difficult. Is there going to be the millions of pounds of investment? I don't think I'm best placed to say that, because we've seen the acquisition of Findex into the Savvy Gaming Group along with ESL Gaming, and Face It now as the EFG Group. So I think there will be investment at the top levels. I think there will be big kind of sort of acquisitions and mergers, but ultimately there's only so many businesses and companies to do that with, and I think that will level out. I do think that teams are a little bit, UK teams are a little bit late off the mark in terms of organisation, from grassroots up to tier one in terms of revenue diversification, and being just a service provider isn't even going to cut it these days. They're going to need to be looking at SaaS and digital platforms and exporting that out internationally to make up for those lack or harder sponsorship models. So that's my general take on it. Throwing my hat in the ring.
There was a lot of content in there, though, wasn't
Sorry.
there? That was
Yeah.
nice. Neil, I'm going to come to you if that's okay now, and for your sort of view on where does the UK sit in that sort of European esports pecking order, I think is the term that you can use, and can the UK be a leader in Europe, and is that connected to money? What do you think?
I don't necessarily think it's connected to money directly, but from a publisher point of view, you know, it's our job to make sure that we're able to kind of fund that ecosystem to be able to get more players, which breeds more teams, which breeds more, you know, you bring more organizations into the ecosystem. And then at the same time, we need to make sure that they know what they've got to do to get to, you know, to tier one, to make sure that they are then able to make that revenue that they need to make sure that they are sustainable for long term. So for us, yeah, it's you know, quite easy short answer. It's we just got to keep investing in those grassroots, making sure that we're providing that path to pro for the teams, making sure we're educating those players and those teams a little bit more, because we've seen it like with the Six Invitational. I'll go back to Rainbow Six because it's, you know, on brand, but the Six Invitational, G2 won that. They had 2 players from the UK. Of which one of them, Doki, has literally come up from UK grassroots. I mean, he was in the team that came runner-up in the ESL Premiership for Rainbow Six in 2017, and now he's just won the World Championship. So, you know, it's happened before. You know, in the I think we had, I can't remember how many players off the top of my head we had directly at the Six Invitational, but we had 2 players at G2, the captain of Koi, who was still top 4. You know, M&M were up there, who are a, you know, UK organization, Heroic, who have had UK players, etc. They had at least 1 or 2 UK players in their team. You know, it's happening from a player standpoint. You know, we just want to make sure that M&M don't fail at the group stage next year, and they get a little bit further, really. So it's definitely one that's there. I think it's doable, but we just, each game has to be able to support its ecosystem in general. That doesn't just go for us. That goes for, you know, games like FIFA, games like Rocket League. You know, not that I'm calling them out or anything, but, you know, they need to make sure that they are investing in all of those different levels to continue having players and educate and help those players grow throughout their own ecosystems, because it's for everyone's good, really, at the end of the day.
Wouter, I'm going to come to you with the same question in a second, but beforehand, Neil, I'm sorry, while I've got you on screen and we're talking here about sort of UK, I'm apologising because it might be an awkward question, so I apologise. But we talk about, you know, UK, its position compared to other European regions and what have you. How does it work in Ubisoft? If you've got, are there Neils all across Europe and you're competing against them to try and push the UK side? Is that something which happens?
Are there Neils across all of Europe? It's no.
That's an image for you, isn't it? You know,
yeah, it's scary. I don't think my wife will like that. But no, there are multiple people within Ubisoft that, you know, we have a full structure. There are people across the globe, to be honest. You know, there are still people in Australia. There are still people in Germany. There are still people in the US, etc., LATAM, that are there and helping create those ecosystems, and we all then feed up into that global ecosystem, which is kind of more built out of France and Montreal, where the studio is.
Yeah, I just wondered, how can we make the UK the sort of preeminent for you? How can we help? You know, what is there a way that we can help push and promote UK esports so that you become the kingpin of those of that network of people?
Yeah, that's already in progress. No, it's more a case of, you know, the more I do, the more we do as the UK northern, whatever you want to call it, arm of Ubisoft to provide more opportunity for those teams. Making sure that I'm engaged and investing with people like NSE, with Newell, with third party tournaments like an Insomnia, like an Epic LAN. The more I'm doing that, the more players that come through, the more I shout about it on our, international calls of, look, 50% of the teams that took part in the Challenger League were all from the UK. They do often, Wolves are my adopted team. It's a French roster, but hey, it's a UK organisation. So, I'll take it. So, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And Wouter, sorry, I set you up for it and then I just drifted away and continued to chat to Neil. Sorry about that. Taking you back to sort of the where does the UK sit in this sort of European esports scene, and how can we is it even realistic to aspire to be sort of the leading nation in Europe, in the UK? What do you think?
Yeah, I think to a good extent, yes. I think first of all, on how when we speak about profitability evaluations, or we look at that, I think I'm always been a person to say, I think esports, the word esports is actually doing more damage than good. It's competitive gaming. We speak about the comparison with sports. And I know, obviously as a fact that in the past many years, in those pitches, there's been often drawn often a reference to sports and sports valuations, and that was on the back of media rights development and monetization. I think that's one of the things that never really materialized, definitely not as much as sports at all. However, I think we're sort of on a turning point, and taking Rainbow Six as a good example. There's Valorant, there's Rocket League, and other examples where in-game monetization is obviously becoming more and more part, not only pot for the publishers, but also for other participants, that's players and that's teams, etc. And I think that's still an early development, but what I think is the beauty of this is that rather than looking how sports monetizes, we actually start to look how gaming and esports or competitive gaming monetizes. And I think you see these examples across the board. You spoke about majority of the ecosystem. There's plenty of examples of how we used to play sports stadia, music stadia, maybe at times still do, but we are getting into more dedicated gaming venues or esports venues. The same as how we do media evaluation, tracking, etc. So I think there are plenty of examples how we actually start to make a break. We didn't mention the word Olympics yet, but we might get to that still. But how we make a break from how things done are sports, how we do it in gaming, in effect, there are references to music as well. So I think we'll get to a point where we look at valuation monetization that's more endemic. Endemic is not a bad word. It's a beautiful word. It's a big world, and it's all gaming monetization. I think for UK Indies, it's a weird mix of that we're in a language market. So it's English versus French versus Spanish, Arabic as a big gaming market as well. What is the position of a country? But the way I always thought about Excel Esports, I think we're a great British example that is also an export product. And I think that has also many examples in the UK, whether it be music, sports, etc. So it's maybe not really defined by countries, as you see in sports. Maybe it's something more like music, where it's more about the culture and the British culture that you could see as an export product. So again, it gets to creative industries, or had also mentioned about SaaS and platforms. And so one thing that we do with Excel Esports, we have also gone more into game coaching platforms, something we thought that it's close to League of Legends. It's close to our core activity of game performance and to support that. So I'm also a believer how we as a business need to be successful, export, a product, a brand, create affinity, obviously work with British talent, but we're English market as well, and international. And at the same time, we're, that's very much what I'm working on right now. It's like, what is actually our successful business? Maybe not too much looking at just sports, but more looking into our own ecosystem and see what works for us.
It's fascinating. Particularly, I like the point about exporting. This is something that actually gets the attention of government and policymakers as well if we're successful exporters. So there's sort of a double-edged bonus of that, not just bringing the funds in, but also being able to promote UK esports. So it's fascinating. Thank you. We're not going to get to the Olympics question. We haven't got time, unfortunately, but I'm going to quickly go to James for a quick comment on this, and then I'll ask you all, not on the script, but to talk about one thing that's really exciting you, something that you're really looking forward to around this particular sector in the future as we look into the future. I didn't prepare you for that, but you get a moment while James answers the question to come up with something. So
I didn't get a moment though, do I, Sam?
Well, I'm going to come to you last on that question. So you can still reference, why didn't you make the UK the centre of esports while you were, leading ESL? Why haven't you done it?
Good shot. I think I couldn't say it better than Wouter. I think he hits the nail on the head on every point there. It's a language situation, and you look at when we took the major to Brazil, literally that turned into what should have been just a stadium event. It ended up being every single group stage tournament being held live with an audience. They had to open, ESL had to open a whole fan village. It reminisced, a major sporting event, and I think that's not what we want to be focusing on in terms of building out what the industry is on a regional basis. I think like we've spoken a lot about it starts at the grassroots. It starts about the communities. It's proving out where the talent's coming from, where the viewership is, and we're in a very, very busy, entertaining country to compete in, for that matter, but we're also a very large gaming country, so the opportunity absolutely is there. So it's a matter of time, and I think if I think about all the predictions I made while we'd early days of ESL, they all started to come true. It was just literally a matter of investment and time around that, and just on the investment, I think a lot of early investment into esports in a very enthusiastic and excitable manner has starting to fall foul in terms of the lack of revenues that are being secured on the consumer side, and I think there's been an over-index on the reliance on sponsorship. If you speak to Nielsen, they will be very clear around the lack of sponsorship, certainly in a state of recession for a couple of years. And in fact, if you were to take inflation off the growth figure of sponsorship is actually reducing in size. So back to Wouter's very valid point, it's about B2C revenues and it's about media value. And we have to really start to shift our thinking in what are we offering? Is this like a sporting event with a very similar business model behind it, or is this competitive entertainment where we can actually think about however we attract an audience, and what value are we bringing for brands that are partnering, and ultimately getting a return of investment, and that is absolutely essential to get right.
There's a lot to think about there, isn't there? Lots of challenges. I mean, the report that's coming out is both challenges and opportunities. I'd like to end on a high, if that's all right. So I'm going to come to you with something that you're excited about, something you're looking forward to, an opportunity that you would like us to think about before we close the session down. It can be something to do with your own business and own work, whatever you fancy. I'm coming to you first, Wouter, and then over to you, Neil. So Wouter, what excites you? What are you looking forward to?
Oh yeah, you really put me on the spot here. Obviously, Excel Esports going to Worlds.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about indeed MSI coming to London.
Yes.
There's obviously also Apex Legends. Apex Legends and other events, etc. But this is one closer to us, and I think that's amazing. It's a great achievement for the UK and puts us again on the esports world map. And on that, I think in a broad picture, I think all the lockdowns hasn't been that amazing. Maybe for gaming, yes, for esports less. So I look forward to just more and bigger events, and we're getting back to where we left it. And I think that is where the fireworks is happening. That's where esports is happening. So broadly, speaking, I look forward to many more live events and see great spectacles.
Lovely, thank you very much. Like I said, you can plug your own company. You're allowed to talk about that. I'm quite happy with that. Neil, I'm coming to you next. I saw that Michael had come up with the real number for UK players at the Six Invitation. He knows everything, doesn't he?
Yeah. He had his note. He had his notes. I didn't. So
unless he's pulling a fast one, and it was actually 11. Who knows? He said it was 12. Who knows? Anyway,
I'm just right. So
what's exciting you?
Very similar live events, but more on a slightly different scale. Like the thing that going to SI was amazing, not just because it was the grand thing of Rainbow Six Siege, but there were, I think we counted, not including players, just over 30 people who had flown from the UK off their own back to go to the SI finals. Like Montreal wasn't cheap. I know because I had to book our flights and the ones for our content creators and pay for that trip. So that was quite an expensive expense report. But they love the game that much. They flew across the world essentially to see that. So then coming back to the UK, like as Valter said, with Apex, with MSI, other events like we had last summer the Pokemon World Championships, and we've got the Pokemon European Championships in April in London. Games like that, like moments like that bring the communities together so that they can, for some of them for the first time in years, be able to kind of experience that fandom and that joy of the game that they invest so much time and money into, to be fair. With their friends. It's amazing to see. It's why events, and hopefully events like like Insomnia, like EGX, like Epic Land continue to carry on including esports in those events, because again, it brings those communities there. Those communities will probably try and play in those tournaments because there's less on the line on some of those, especially in something like an EGX. They get them more invested, they get more excited, they then start thinking about that path to pro a little bit further. So I'm really excited to see live events, not just the big ones but the smaller ones, even an NSE or a Newell final being in person again with a crowd will be great to see everyone cheering everyone on. I think that's the thing I'm most excited for this year.
Amazing, thank you very much for that. James, I'm coming to you. You've had enough thinking time, I reckon.
Sam, I think one is formats, like it's getting out of this mentality of game or the esports format as we know it, and I've been started working with some IP which is really kind of bending that idea of competitive play. One being a physical game called Haddo, another one being revisiting retro games and creating competitive formats from something that pretty much everyone knows on the planet, such as Pac-Man. And I think it's an application of innovation in that respect. So it's how do you create new fan experiences, new consumer experiences, new brand engagements in order to really drive that value, which will ultimately be the best media you can lay your hands on in the entertainment industry as a whole. And I think suddenly things will start to really snowball from that respect. And then finally, I think kind of hitting on innovation to some degree, but I think the introduction of Web3 games is going to be super interesting to this industry, because Web3 will intrinsically allow third-party companies to make a lot more business out of the IP that everyone's focused on. Not every game developer is like Ubisoft, which allows its content creators and its teams to make money from the content that's being created. Some of them very, very closed. Web3 will completely rip that apart and allow everyone to start generating business off the back of what this industry is doing predominantly.
Amazing, thank you for that. A final word is for you, Heather, if that's okay.
Oh, hopefully it's a good one. I think tying it back to Yuki, really, I think in times of pressure and change and economic turmoil, I would say right now over the next few years, I'm looking forward to everyone being less fractious and the overall industry, particularly in the UK, coming together a lot more and actually doing the things we said we were going to do sort of a few years ago as a collective, and working with people like Alex, and we were super lucky for Alex to come and talk today, but yeah, working with the likes of Yuki, being part of the Yuki esports subgroup, and banding together and actually having some core focuses, whether that be Web3, whether that be, you know, supporting grassroots a lot more, getting recognition, what are we, sports, not sports, that type of thing. I'm looking forward to a lot more of that, and I feel like we're ready to have those conversations and put some action in place now. So yeah,
that's a lovely sentiment and some brilliant thoughts there. That's amazing. Yeah, we'd love to do that. Let's get everyone together and make it work for us all. So thank you very much, all of our panelists, for joining us here today. This is where I read out your names and say thank you, and the crowd stand up. Well, some of them stand up and they applause, but let's pretend they're doing it. So thank you to Alex, to Dom, to James, Heather, Neil, and Wouter. Thank you for giving up your time and joining us and sharing your insight with us. It's greatly appreciated. Particular thank you to our audience who've come along today, and quite a few of the questions that I've been channeling through have come from them. So thank you for joining us and participating. And there's a few more comments there that I'll channel to our delegates afterwards. So thank you very much for that. Enjoy the rest of your evening. You know, go esports. There's a great opportunity there. Let's all work together to make it work for us all, so we can all benefit. So thank you again.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.